Hello and welcome to another problem solving session in Java. So today we'll be taking a look at another problem that has been featured on codewars.com. So this is a very unique kind of a problem. It says here, let us study the instructions first. So make the deadfish swim. So this is actually the name of the problem, and they are saying write a simple parser that will parse and run deadfish. So deadfish has 4 commands, each 1 character long. So what are the commands? So the commands are all actually character values. Okay, so all the commands that are used in this interpreter called deadfish, those are character values. So when you are inputting I, it will increment a value which is initially 0. When you are inputting D, it will decrement the value. So when you are entering S, it will square the given value, and when you are entering O, it will output the value in a return array. And apart from this, all the invalid characters, that is any character apart from I, D, S, O and so on, they are going to be ignored. Okay, so what deadfish is, if you want to check that, you can just do it on their official wiki. They have got a wiki page for deadfish, and the code for each and every for the deadfish language in each and every for the deadfish interpreter in each and every language is available on this page. So here we've got the C code, C# code, COBOL code and so on. So every conceivable programming language that you can think of, the code for deadfish is there. So let us take a look at the description of deadfish. So it's a very odd interpreted programming language created by Jonathan Todd Skinner. It was released under the public domain and was originally programmed in C, but has since been ported to many other programming languages. So it has a way to output things, but it has no way to input them. Okay, so it has only a few commands, only 4 in total. It is also case sensitive and can only deal with integer values when adding or subtracting. However, once squared, this number increases greatly. So let us just study the C code for the language. Okay, so it is a pretty elaborate code. So you can see here that the basic, so the the gist of this programming language is that it is not actually a programming language. It is a sort of like an interpreter that has been created by someone called Jonathan Todd using it was originally created using C, but now it has been ported to other languages, as you have seen just now. So it can only take character values as input. Okay, so initially we have got a number, so it can be any integer value, say x, whose initial value is 0. So depending on the value entered by the user, it will perform the requisite action. So it can only perform 4 actions. Okay, so you can see that there are 4 commands, I, D, S and O. So I will increment the value. So if initially we've got integer value, say 0, it will be incremented by 1, that is, it will become from 0, it will become 1. So if we enter I once again from 1, it will become 2. If we enter I yet once again, it will become 3 from 2 and so on. And after that we've got decrement command, so it will reduce the value of I. So let us imagine that the value of I is currently 3. So if we enter D, it will decrease 3 by 1, so it will become 2. I will become 2. So square will now perform the square value of I, which is 2 square gives us 4. And finally if we enter O, it will produce the output. Okay, so it says that sometimes the additional command H is used, meaning halt, so that is not required for our program. So whenever you want to see the current value of I after performing all the actions, you can enter O, and then it will print the output. So there is a lot of information available on this page for deadfish, so it's not possible for me to go through the entire program over here or the entire contents of this file. So I'll be leaving a link for this particular page down in the description. You can look it up if you want to. So just let us check that once again. So when you are entering I, it is incrementing the value of x. When you are entering D, it is decrementing the value of x. When you are entering O, it is simply printing the value of x, and when you are entering S, it is performing the square. Okay, and for any other value that is that you can enter apart from I, D, S and O, it will perform it will simply print a new line. Okay, so it doesn't print any kind of error messages. But if you enter a character that is not recognized by this so-called programming language or interpreter, then instead of printing an error message, it will print a new line. So let us imagine if someone enters a character called A. So A is not a part of this language, so it will only recognize I, D, S and O. So A will produce a new line. Alright, that means whatever we have entered is not recognized by the language. So this is how it has been originally implemented by Jonathan Todd. So my coding is loosely based on this logic. So it says there are 4 commands in the implementation that we have got here. It is same. I will increment the value which is initially 0, D will decrement the value, S will square the value, and O outputs the value into the return array. So instead of outputting it to the console, we will have an array which will store the output, okay, at any given time. So if we enter O, so if the string contains an O value, it will output the current value of I into a integer array. So you can see here they have given an example. So if we enter this string, it will give this output. So this is the string, and when you enter this string, it will process it and it will enter 2 characters, output 2 characters, 8 and 64. Okay, so let me just explain what is going on over here. Let me copy it to a text file. So when it is attempting to parse this file, so you can see initially the value of I am taking an integer value, say x, whose initial value is 0. So I am taking int x equals 0, and after that, when let me just get rid of this minus sign over here. So whenever we know that whenever we are encountering an I in the string, so x will be incremented by 1, so x becomes 1. After that we enter I once again, so x becomes 2. So after that we enter I once again. So you can see that there are 3 i's in the source string. So I will increment the value of x from 1 to 2 to 3, right? So after this we will have to square. You can see that after this there is a s character. That means the current value of x, which is 3, it will have to be squared. So we will be squaring this and we'll be getting 9. Alright, so now after this we've got a D character. So decrements the value, it means it will decrease the value from 9 to 8. Alright, and after this it will simply after this we've got a O character. So whenever we're getting the O character, it will store the current value of x into a integer variable. So here in our program we have created an array explicitly for this purpose. So let us imagine we've got an array, say int a or int array or whatever. So the length the array will store, I'll be talking about the length later on. So the array will be of a certain length, and every time we encounter O, it will store the current value of x into the array. Okay, so initially O is encountered over here for the first time. So when we get O, the value of x is 8, so we stored it into the array like this. Okay, so array has a certain number of cells in which you can store the data. So initially we encountered O over there and we stored the value of x at that point, which is 8. So after that we again encounter s. So s means we'll have to perform the square of this value of 8. So after we store in the array, store it in the array, we'll perform the square of 8, which is this, and we'll be keeping it like this, 64. Once again, after S we have another O character. That means we'll have to store this value of X, which is 64, to the array once again. So finally, after the end of this string, we'll be storing 64. So when you enter something like this, you'll be getting 8 and 64 inside the array. Okay. So now we come to the length of the array, the question of the length of the array. So what will be the length of the array? We cannot take an array of any indefinite size, because that will result in an error. I'll be showing it to you in the code. So we'll have to take an array depending on the number of O's that are there in the source string. Okay. So if there are 2 O's, that means we'll have to store the output twice during the entire run of the program. So 2 O's means we'll have to store the state of X twice in the array. So that means if the size of the array is 2, it will suffice for our needs. Okay, so you will have to count the number of O's that are present in the source string at a given time, and then you will have to set the size of the array accordingly. So to do that, what we have done is, here we have taken something called a regular expression. Okay, so regular expression is used to match a certain pattern in a string object. Okay, so what we have essentially done is we have matched all the occurrences of a O in the program, and we have counted the number of times O is occurring in the string, and we have set the size of the array accordingly. So if the character O occurs twice, the size of the array will be 2. Okay, so I'll be getting into it in detail later on when I'll be showing you the code, so don't worry. So if you want to study regular expressions, you can check this guide on regular expressions that is available on baildung.com. Also, there is a very good tutorial by this channel called Durga Software Solutions. You can also check that. So I'll be leaving the links for these tutorials in the description below. You can just look them up. So so this is the entire gist of the program. Okay, that is the process of how we are going to solve the program. So let us now take a look at our code, and I'll be explaining it to you how it is working. So this here is our code. So let me copy and paste it to a file, so it will be easier to explain that way. So let me store it in a notepad file once again. So this was a stub method initially, and I have just added the code to it. So here you can see the first order of business. So they are giving us this string data. So data will contain the string that you want to pass to this program. So let us imagine we are passing this value. So whatever we want to pass in the test cases, that will be stored in this particular string object. Okay, so now initially, before we can do anything, we'll have to create an array, the size of which will be equivalent to the number of O's that are present in the source string. So we can, there is the easier way to do this will be to create a loop which will be running up to the length of the string, and every time we encounter the O character, we'll be keeping a counter whose value will be incremented, and finally we'll be setting the size of the array according to the number of times O was detected in the source string. So that is one of the ways, but we have done it to avoid spending too much time on counting this data. We have used the process of regular expressions. So what we have done is, so you can see that data represents the string here. So what we have done is, this is actually a regular expression, right? So we have used the replace all command that is available for regular expressions. So this is actually, this represents our regex, and what we are trying to do is, what it means is replace all replaces the characters, a given character in a string with something else. Okay, so that is what replace all does. Replace all will replace one character with another character. So what we are doing here is we are telling the program to find all characters apart from O in the source string. Okay, find all characters apart from O. So this is actually a NOR expression. So this represents NOR. Okay, and these are OR expressions. So these represent OR values, and this one represents the NOT value. So together they are becoming NOR. So you can just go through all the details about these regex expressions in this guide. Okay, so you can do that. So let us now go back to our code. So what it is telling the system is, so it is asking the program to find all occurrences of characters apart from O in the source string and to replace them with nothing, empty spaces. Okay, so this represents this is actually nothing, it is a null value, which means it is essentially removing all characters apart from O in the source string. So if the source string is something like this one, so it will eradicate all the characters apart from O in the source string, and it will leave behind only the O's. Okay, so it will only leave behind, for this particular string it will eliminate all those other characters, and it will leave only the two O's. So this NOT means remove all characters apart from O, okay, and replace them with nothing, null. And so if we remove all the characters apart from O, we can get only two O's in the string, only two O's are remaining behind, and we are going to use them to count the length, and we are, after replacing all the non-O characters with nothing, we are going to count the length of the string, that is of the resultant string. So when we replace all the O's with we replace all the values apart from O's with the null values, we get only two O's like this, O and O. And after this, in the resultant string, which is O and O, will be, after getting the resultant string, will be counting its length. Okay, so essentially what we are doing is we are removing all the characters apart from O in the source string, and then we are counting the length of the string. So length of the string will essentially give us the number of O's that are remaining behind. Okay, so we are doing that in one line rather than going creating a for loop, then counting the number of O's using carity and then incrementing a counter and all that. We are simply doing it in one line by using the regular expression. So that is the advantage that is afforded to us by using regular expressions. So we are counting the number of O's in the line using this regular expressions, and then we are creating the new array in accordance with the number of O's that are present in the source string. So as I have told you before, we cannot create an array of any arbitrary size. The size of the array must correspond exactly to the number of O's that are present in the source string. So for that reason, we've gone into all this hassle of counting the number of O's and then setting the size of the array in accordance with the number of O's that are present in the source string. So after this, what we are doing is we are traversing the entire string, which is data, and every time we encounter, so we are essentially performing a switch case over here. So we are extracting a character from the source string using the carity command, and every time we encounter a particular character, we are incrementing. So every time we encounter I, we are incrementing the value of X. So we are essentially doing what they have told us in this instruction, in the instructions. So you can see that whenever we are getting I, we are incrementing the value of of X. So whenever we are getting D as a character, we are decrementing the value of X. When we are getting S, we are squaring the value of X. And when we are getting O, so this is the most important part, we are storing the current value of X inside the array. So we already know the number of O's that are there in the program. We have calculated that using our regular expressions. by applying regular expressions. So what we are doing is we are using the O to store. Whenever we are getting O, we are simply storing them in the array, and after storing them in the array, we are incrementing the positional index of the array by 1, so that it moves on to the next positional index after storing the current value of x. So for positional index, we are using a variable called k, whose initial value is 0, and at the end we are returning the array, the resulting array. So this constitutes our program. So let me just show you what happens. So let me just test my code. So I've already executed it once earlier, so you can just you can see that it is working just fine. So now you can now let me just try another approach. Let me just replace this array with something arbitrary. So if I replace this with with an array of any random size, say 8. Okay, so let us see what happens. So you can see that array lengths differed. You are getting an error. Expected length is 2 and we are getting 8. That means apart from the 2 O's that are present in this system over here, it expects only an array of size 2, because there are 2 O's in the source string. So here they have got the test cases. So the error occurred when they tried to execute the first test case with this string IIIDOSO. So in IIIDOSO, that we have the string over here, they have got 2 O's. So the system is expecting an array of size 2, but we have created an array of random size, that is of 8, which doesn't actually correspond to the number of O's that are present in the string. So that is why it is resulting in an error. So let me just remove this and let me just restore the original code, and then it will work just fine. And now let us attempt it. So now it is testing it with all the test cases, and all the test cases have passed. Okay, so this is the logic behind this particular program. So hopefully you like this tutorial. So more tutorials like this will be uploaded in my channel in the foreseeable future. So if you want to keep in touch with me, you can do that by following me on YouTube and on Facebook, and I'll be leaving a link for my Facebook account in the description part of this video. So that's it for now, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care, guys.